Hi everybody, my name is Victoria Moreno and I'm a Tobacco Prevention Coordinator at the Recovery Resource Council in the Prevention Resource Center. I've created this brief video to give you all an overview about e-cigarettes, the dangers they pose to your child, and how to talk to your child about vaping. Tobacco prevention is a very important topic to me because it all starts with parents and teens learning the truth about tobacco, which hasn't always been easy because of Big Tobacco's deceitful past. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, learned something new, and let's get started. Just to give a brief overview, first we'll go over who Recovery Resource Council, or RRC, is and the programs and services that we provide. Then we'll get straight into it by talking about e-cigarettes, what they are, how they work, some of the discrete products you should be aware of, what the law currently is in Texas and in the United States concerning tobacco and e-cigarette products. Then we'll talk about some of the health harms, including EVALI, some of the aerosols or the smokes, and second and third hand smoke. Then we'll go over e-cigarette and your child and how you can talk to them about vaping and some cessation tools or quit aids that are available to you. So now, just to summarize a few of our services in our West Campus in Fort Worth, we have an array of prevention programs for various age groups and extensive clinical services such as counseling for substance use and/or mental health needs of adults, adolescents, and families. Enduring Families, which is a veteran services program that provides outpatient counseling and support services for returning military veterans and their families. Project New Start, which focuses on the chronically homeless with disabilities. Our hotline that does screenings and assessments over the phone. And our classes that include DWI intervention, DWI education, and drug offender education. In our East Campus in Dallas, we offer extensive HIV support and counseling, additional prevention programs, community coalitions like the Dallas Area Drug Prevention Partnership, or DADP, and Tobacco Free North Texas, or TNT, that are all open to the public. Additionally, the Prevention Resource Center, or PRC, serves the majority of North Texas counties and can assist with community service, conferences and workshops, and general information and referrals. In our North Campus in Denton, the Counseling Center has been designed to facilitate individual counseling, marriage counseling, family therapy, play therapy, group counseling, and referrals to deliver a comprehensive service array. Like I mentioned earlier, the Prevention Resource Center, or PRC, services all of the counties that you see up here and can provide a variety of educational resources for you and your child. Okay, so now let's get into learning the basics about e-cigarettes. Electronic nicotine delivery systems, sometimes called ENDS or e-cigarettes, are devices that heat liquid to produce a harmful mix of aerosols or clouds. E-cigarettes come in many different shapes and sizes and are known by many names, such as e-cigs, vape pens, cigalikes, and mods. Sometimes e-cigarette use can be referred to as vaping or juuling. Some of the most popular brands among young people include Juuls and Puff Bars. However, the typical Juul or Puff Bar we see today is one of the more advanced forms of e-cigarettes. The first generation or model of e-cigarettes look like the ones we see here. They're called cigalikes, and they're disposable. Then, a few years later, the second generation or models of e-cigarettes were released, and they were called vape pens or e-pens. These contained a rechargeable battery that came pre-filled with liquid or could be filled with vape liquid. Then these third generation e-cigarettes were created, and these are called mods or tanks. These gained lots of popularity because of the bigger clouds that they emit, and again, these can be filled with vape juice and contain larger batteries. Finally, we have the fourth generation, which is what most youth are using. These come pre-filled or can be filled with vape juice, and many are rechargeable, although some are disposable, which encourage youth to just buy another if it's confiscated at school or by a parent. Okay, so now that we have a better understanding of what e-cigarettes are, let's go into how they work. We can start by watching this short clip.
Many teens think e-cigarettes are a safe alternative to traditional cigarettes. But like smoking, using e-cigarettes or vaping can harm your health. Often called vapes, e-cigarettes come in different shapes and sizes. They may be designed to look like tobacco cigarettes or resemble everyday objects like USB sticks. While they may look different, e-cigarettes are all designed to work in similar ways. When someone puffs on the mouthpiece, a battery heats up a liquid contained inside the device. This liquid then turns into an aerosol that is inhaled. The aerosol resembles a vapor. Depending on the device, e-cigarette aerosol may appear as a thick cloud or be barely visible. But all e-cigarette aerosols are a mixture of chemicals, some of which are known to be harmful. Some of these substances are in the liquid, such as nicotine, the same highly addictive chemical in tobacco, and chemicals used to flavor the aerosol. These flavor chemicals can be harmful to the lungs when inhaled. Some of the chemicals in the aerosol are created when the e-cigarette liquid is heated. These can include acrolein, a potentially harmful chemical also used in weed killers. If that's not enough, some e-cigarette aerosol also contain toxic metals. So think about it. When someone vapes, they can be exposing their body to a number of harmful chemicals. To find out more, watch the next video.
Okay, so let's summarize. We can start with the bottom with the battery. The battery heats up the atomizer, and the atomizer is that metal coil that then heats up the e-juice or the vape juice and converts it to an aerosol or smoke or a cloud. All of that is passed directly into the mouthpiece at the very top and inhaled into the body of the person vaping. Like we saw, all e-cigarettes are super different, but they all have this standard template when it comes to how they work. So I know that we've talked about how e-cigarettes come in many different shapes and sizes, and even though some of them look a lot like the ones we see here, there are also some discrete products that are made to be kept hidden or secret from parents and or teachers. So the ones on the left are Juuls at the top and Puff Bars at the bottom. The Juuls are rechargeable and the Puff Bars are disposable. Both are very popular among youth. A quick fact about these, just one of those pods or Puff Bar sticks can contain as much nicotine as 1 or even 2 packs of cigarettes. They seem small and harmless, but they pose big threats to your child's health. The ones on the right here are discrete vape products. So here we have a vape hoodie, a lipstick tube, an inhaler, and a pen that are all secret vapes. I show you these products not to scare or worry you about every item your child might have, but to simply let you know these products are out there. So I'm sure you might be wondering how children access e-cigarettes if they're underage and what the laws actually are. Well, on September 1st, 2019, Texas legislators passed Senate Bill 21, which increased the legal age for a person from 18 to 21 for the sale, distribution, possession, purchase, and consumption of cigarettes, e-cigarettes, or tobacco products. However, this law came with 2 exemptions, and you might have heard of these already. The first one is the military exemption, or individuals who are at least 18 years of age and in the United States in the military forces or state military forces, and they show their ID at the time of purchase. The second exemption is the grandfather exemption. It's when individuals were born on or before August 31st of 2001. However, a few months later, on December 20th of 2019, the federal minimum age increased from 18 to 21 for the sale of tobacco products, including cigarettes, cigars, and e-cigarettes, with no exemptions whatsoever. This legislation became effective immediately. So what did that mean for Texas? Well, for the most part, stores are choosing to follow federal law, but some stores are still honoring the state exemptions. Another thing that's changed recently is the flavor ban on tobacco products. Once this bill passed in February of 2020, Many thought all of our problems were solved because if we banned flavored products, teens and young adults would be less attracted to them, right? Well, actually, there's a loophole in that law that still allows flavored tobacco products to be sold. As we see here, the new policy permits all flavored products to continue to be sold in devices that cannot be refilled, or in other words, disposable e-cigarettes. And if you remember earlier, these puff bars that we have here are disposable, and that's what allows them to continue to sell a rainbow of flavors to teens and young adults. Juuls, while still are being used by youth, are not as favorable now because this ban only permits tobacco and menthol flavors to be sold. But where are teens and young adults getting these products?
Well, surprisingly, they're not only sold at vape or smoke shops. They could just be regular gas stations. So here we have them in nice shiny cases at the gas station. E-cigarettes can also be purchased online with minimal age verification. Unfortunately, just like with other drugs such as alcohol, underage children will ask older friends, family, and strangers to purchase the products for them. Okay, so now let's learn more about the dangers vaping poses to your child's health. We can start off by watching this short clip.
Did you know that vaping can expose people to harmful substances? Most e-cigarettes contain nicotine, the same highly addictive chemical found in cigarettes and other tobacco products. Nicotine causes the brain to release dopamine. This natural chemical causes feelings of pleasure and encourages more nicotine use. Over time, this leads to addiction, in which a person loses control of their decision to do something and will continue to do so despite negative consequences. Teens are especially vulnerable to nicotine addiction because their brains are still developing. Teens may not realize how much nicotine they can be exposed to in a single vaping session. One pod of the popular Juul brand of e-cigarettes can contain as much nicotine as a whole pack of regular cigarettes. E-cigarette aerosol is not safe either. Some e-cigarette aerosol contains harmful chemicals, such as formaldehyde and acetaldehyde, which can cause irreversible lung damage. The aerosol can also contain particles of metals like lead and chromium. Some of these metals are toxic. Even inhaling the flavor chemicals can be harmful. For example, one of these, acrylonitrile, is also used to make adhesives and is poisonous in large doses. When you know these facts, it's clear to see how e-cigarettes can harm your health.
To find out more, watch the next video.
Okay, so to review, nicotine, or the addictive chemical found in tobacco products such as cigarettes, cigarillos, chewing tobacco, and in most e-cigarettes can completely rewire your child's brain to making nicotine a need, causing addiction. And because your child's brain is still growing and developing, these changes to the brain are much stronger and happen faster than in an adult brain. Nicotine can harm the parts of your child's brain that control attention, mood, learning, and impulse control. A recent study by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, found that 99% of e-cigarettes sold in the US contained nicotine. And some e-cigarettes didn't even say if their products contain nicotine or not. Some e-cigarettes have even claimed they did not contain nicotine, and then when tested, revealed they did in fact contain nicotine. Next, e-cigarette smoke is not harmless water vapor. We'll talk more about what's in e-cigarette aerosol, or the smoke, in the next few slides, but if your child inhales any substance, it's a danger to your child's respiration and leaves them at risk for mouth, throat, and lung disease and injury. Next, e-cigarettes can cause unintentional injuries, such as small explosions and fires caused by defective batteries in e-cigarettes. Additionally, children and adults have been poisoned by swallowing, breathing, and/or absorbing the vape liquid or e-liquid. Lastly, if your child uses e-cigarettes as a teen, they are much more likely to transition into using cigarettes in the future. So we just talked about vaping nicotine, but vaping marijuana can also pose serious risks to your child's health. Although it is less common that children vape marijuana, it is something that you should be aware of. Vaping marijuana concentrate, THC, can be more dangerous than smoking the drug. This is because people often vape a higher concentrate of THC, which in turn intensifies the high and can increase the likelihood of addiction and adverse medical consequences. Studies have found that regular marijuana use during the teen years disrupts brain development and can also lead to problems with attention span, behavior, and impulse control in adulthood. Vaping either substance is a threat to your child's health and development. As you might remember, late 2019 to early 2020, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, was investigating EVALI, or e-cigarette vaping-associated lung injuries, or lung injuries that were linked to e-cigarette use. Finally, the CDC linked the cases and deaths to vitamin E acetate in vapes. In all, as of February 18, 2020, a total of 2,807 hospitalized e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury, or EVALI, cases or deaths were reported to the CDC from all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and 2 U.S. territories, Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. 68 deaths were confirmed in 29 states. THC containing e-cigarettes or vaping products, particularly from informal sources like friends, family, or in-person online dealers, are linked to most EVALI cases and play a major role in the outbreak. However, the CDC states that the evidence collected in this investigation is not sufficient enough to rule out the other chemicals of concern. This is because some EVALI cases didn't involve THC at all, but only nicotine. Additionally, if we see here in our map, Texas reported significantly more cases than other U.S. states. Overall, e-cigarette use has been linked to severe lung injury and even death. To take an in-depth look at Texas, more specifically here in North Texas, Region 3, we saw the most EVALI cases compared to the rest of the state. Now, let's take a step back and see what's in the vape aerosol or smoke. Well, as we see here, we have nicotine, that dangerous addictive chemical that can completely rewire your child's brain. We have those ultrafine particles that seep deep into your child's lungs, potentially causing injury. Dangerous organic compounds and cancer-causing chemicals. Flavorings like diacetyl that's been linked to a serious lung disease. And heavy metals like nickel, tin, and lead. Exposure to lead while your child's brain is still developing has been linked to lowered IQ scores. So we just finished talking about some of the dangers that the smoker or the vapor might experience, but what we don't always think about is the effect that it has on others. Secondhand smoke or passive smoking is when you are exposed to cigarette or e-cigarette smoke directly. So if your child is hanging out with one of their friends that vapes, even though your child is not vaping, they will still inhale those dangerous chemicals we spoke about in the last slide. And third-hand smoke are all of the leftover particles. So if we continue this example, let's say it's time for your child to come back home for dinner. All of those dangerous chemicals your child inhaled from their friends smoking or vaping around them will also be found on your child's clothes, shoes, and hair, potentially exposing other members of the household to those same harmful chemicals. I know we've covered a lot of information, and right now you might be wondering how you can talk with your child about the dangers of vaping. So let's go over some of the resources that are available. Before we go over a couple of the talking tips and conversation starters, let's look at a few trends of youth e-cigarette use. So even though we're seeing here that electronic vapor or e-cigarette use is increasing here in North Texas among children, and 1 in 4 high school students admit to using e-cigarettes, 75% of high schoolers don't vape. I know it's easy to get caught up in the data and health harms, but it's important that you, as a parent, know that most kids don't vape. So when you start your conversation with your child, try your best to keep that in mind.
Another thing to keep in mind is the enormous pressure to smoke by the tobacco industry. Let's watch this video to go over some ways the tobacco industry tries to trick your child into smoking.
And from what I was telling them about what I knew at that time is only a fraction of what they were really doing that came out with all the documents. There was far more stuff they were doing than I had any inkling that they were doing.
Lying to the public, deceiving, false advertising, advertising to kids.
More doctors smoke Camel.
In the 1950s, you couldn't look at a movie or a TV show without seeing Philip Morris or R.J. Reynolds, and you couldn't find an actor or actress who wasn't having a cigarette in their hand. Desi Arnaz and Lucy Ball, I Love Lucy show, was completely sponsored by Philip Morris.
Test of hundreds of people who smoked only Camels for 30 days, noted throat specialists making weekly examinations reported not one single case of throat irritation due to smoking Camels.
So when I was 12 or so, Fred Flintstone's cartoon was on TV, and it was sponsored by Winston. And Fred and Barney sing the Winston song, "Winston's Tastes Good Like a Cigarette Should."
The Flintstones has been brought to you by Winston, America's best-selling, best-tasting filter cigarette. Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
And so January 1971, all TV ads were banned, and then they shifted all their money over to print media, to magazines and stuff, and newspapers. They put it into racing and sports and baseball scoreboards, then said Marlboro.
The big pushback then was, smoking is sexy, it's slim, it pushes women further. You've come a long way, baby, that kind of stuff. And the tobacco industry knew that they had to go after women back in the 70s and 80s because women were actually smoking much less than they are now. Back then, women's tennis couldn't find a sponsor. Nobody wanted to sponsor women's tennis. So who sponsored them? The Philip Morris Tobacco Company.
Snuff and dipping tobacco was almost gone. It was almost dead. Some little old ladies used snuff, but that was about it. But then when United States Tobacco came out with Skoal and then Copenhagen, and they advertised as Skoal, they used Earl Campbell and Charlie Waters and Charlie Daniels to teach kids how to use Skoal. There were ads to teach you how to put a pinch between your cheek. And then once they got addicted to Skoal, then you could move up to Copenhagen, which was a higher nicotine content. And there's actually documents that say that from US Tobacco that the salesmen are not allowed to hand out freebies at Copenhagen because Copenhagen is much too high a nicotine content and would just kind of blow out their heads and just make them sick and vomit. And so they were never allowed to do that. You could only hand out Skoal to kids.
Back in the 1970s, there's documents from the tobacco industry. They would actually pay realtors to have tobacco products in the back of the store at eye height for 12-year-old kids. And they would say, the kids are going to steal those products, don't bust them. We will replace the product free. Because the tobacco industry estimated that if a kid stole anywhere between 5 and 10 packs of cigarettes, they had a smoker for 50 years. They knew they were selling an addictive product. They knew that the young people's brains get addicted more quickly. So they would actually pay the realtor to let kids become addicted. They strategically marketed to young people. If you look at the history of tobacco sales, you go from 1960, when the average sale was about 20 to 21 years old, to today, which is 12. That's amazing. So they strategically kept lowering the bar on who they were going to target, knowing that older people, 18 to 21, are more likely to not make a wrong decision. So they targeted young people.
The Marlboro at that time, Philip Morris had Marlboro vans going around all the cities in Texas. They would give out freebies of all sorts. You could get shirts and hats and belt buckles. They had where you got so many points for each pack of cigarettes or each carton. When you collected up your points, then you could buy stuff out of the Marlboro catalog. We decided we would get our own van And so we bought a VW van and we painted it with the Marlboro colors, except it said Barfboro. They had I believe it was a dirt bike racing event across the West as one of their promotions. And they were nice enough to give us the list of places they were going to be. And so the Barfboro van followed the Marlboro folks all along their trip. And then in 1991, I believe it was, Philip Morris rented the Virginia copy of the Bill of Rights. So they put it in a big armored truck and had this entourage, and they went from city to city to city showing off the Bill of Rights. And so at each city, they would have kids from the schools come in and see all the Philip Morris advertising stuff as they went in. They knew it was sponsored by Philip Morris, but to see the Bill of Rights. And so the Dock chapter in Seattle made a statue of Nicotina, which looked like the Statue of Liberty, except she was holding a cigarette in one hand and a pack of cigarettes in the other hand. At the bottom, we also had a digital counter, and it counted off the number of people who had died of tobacco since the start of the tour. Philip Morris was also nice enough to give us itinerary, all the cities they were going to be at. So different groups around the country drove the statue, which we could break down into 3 parts, followed them around. So everywhere they set up their exhibit, we set up the statue of Nicotina and got great press all over the place.
The contract shows that Juul paid the Richmond PAL $89,000. In exchange for that payment, Juul got to provide its curriculum controlling the information presented to a group of potential customers, preteens and teens already using e-cigarettes. That's another page out of Big Tobacco's playbook.
They said they didn't do experiments with kids because you can't do that. But they did do focus groups. And they also put together an educational package on Juul that they wanted to bring into schools. That wasn't to educate kids about Juul, it was to educate kids about how Juul works. And so you give a kid information about how you use the product, and guess what? They're going to try to use the product. I think it's particularly disturbing that they've argued that there's a health benefit. There's absolutely no data to support that at all. There's just no data to support that. They're telling you something that doesn't exist.
Did the presenter ever mention his connection to Juul, and were your teachers in the room when he spoke?
He did mention his connection to Juul, and my teachers were not in the room when he spoke.
Did the presenter ever say that Juul was safe?
Yes.
Did the presenter call Juul, quote unquote, totally safe more than once?
Yes.
The tobacco industry has morphed into now let's sell our addictive product in a different way. Let's make it technical for kids. We're going to make it look appealing for kids. We're going to have different colors and flavors. Same thing that they did with tobacco and a cigarette in a tobacco package, but now it's more appealing for the young person who's technology savvy. I go to schools all over the country, and when elementary principals come up to me and show me a box with 10 or 12 or 15 electronic cigarettes in it and say, I've confiscated this from kids all the way down to 3rd and 4th grade. I mean, what is that? I mean, wouldn't any sane person say, okay, wait a minute, let's back the horse up, let's stop production, let's look into this? And that's not going to happen because the tobacco industry now owns 35% of Juul. They probably own 35% of Congress.
So I know that video was a lot, and I'm sure you're probably thinking, how do I even begin to talk to my child about e-cigarettes and vaping?
Some things to help you get started include choosing the right place and time. Choosing the right place and time will ensure that your child won't feel rushed and feeling more relaxed, like if you're riding in the car together or sitting at the dinner table, By choosing a place that you both feel comfortable, you'll both be more inclined to open up. Next, appeal to their good judgment. Your child makes smart decisions every day. Resisting the temptation to vape can be one of them. Compliment their good judgment, remind them that they are an independent thinker who doesn't have to be influenced by peer pressure, and tell them that you're proud of their courage and principles. Finally, ask open-ended questions. Instead of asking yes or no questions, open-ended questions encourage participation. If you're feeling genuinely curious, your child will be less likely to get defensive. Some good conversation starters include, do you know how vaping can damage your health? What do you think about vaping? If you'd like more resources on how to talk to your child about vaping, make sure to look in the description box below for links to more information. If you believe your child is using e-cigarettes and having difficulty quitting, all of the resources you see here can help them get started. Try your best to be patient, supportive, and encouraging during this difficult time. Quitting nicotine is not easy, but with your help and with your support, your child can quit for good. To conclude, we talked about the Recovery Resource Council, or RRC's, programs and services. We talked about e-cigarettes, what they are, how they work, some of the discrete products, and the laws regarding e-cigarettes. We talked about the health harms. We talked about EVALI, aerosol, and second and third-hand smoke. We also talked about how you can talk to your child about vaping, cessation tools, quit aids, and other resources that are available to you. So I hope this helped answer some of your questions about e-cigarettes and open your eyes a little bit about how they work and what they are. So thank you all so much for watching, and stay safe.